Crypto airdrops will undoubtedly be one of the biggest wealth generating events of the next few years. And I have created a master airdrop farming checklist to help you maximize your airdrop potential and make the most money possible. So without wasting any time, let's get right into it. This is the checklist, and I will throw a link to this down below in the description of this video so you can access it and copy a new one for yourself on a different Google Sheets and use it to make sure that you qualify for the most airdrops possible. It's important to mention here that this checklist is only for Ethereum ecosystem airdrops. Of course, there's a whole separate basket of airdrops for the Solana ecosystem, but I'll cover that in a different video. Now, in this checklist, there are a number of different strategies that are going to help us qualify for different layer 2 network airdrops, but also airdrops for the actual applications or protocols that we are going to be interacting with. And you can see that there are a lot of options. Now, while the sheer number of apps and protocols and L2s on this list may seem daunting to you, it's completely up to you how ambitious you want to be with this. Personally, I am going to be repeating all of these activities at least monthly to maximize my airdrop potential. But if you're even more ambitious, you could do weekly. Usually, for example, with the Arbitrum airdrop that happened earlier this year, there's a qualifier that checks if you have completed transactions on that network or protocol monthly or weekly. And so obviously, the more that we do, the better the chances we have of qualifying and then also getting a larger airdrop. So how does this checklist work? Well, I've split it into 3 overarching sections. On the left, we have actions to complete. So there's a list of apps and protocols, and then there's also a type. So for example, the first section here are bridges, and then there's a description of the activity you have to complete to actually qualify for the airdrop by using that app or protocol. So for example, with the across bridge, we're wanting to bridge between different layer 2s, and then we have a list of which airdrops this will help us qualify for. In the case of across, they've already released a token, so by bridging with across, we are only going to be qualifying for the layer 2s that we're bridging to and from. Now, you'll notice that there's a lot of bridges on the list here, and I am by no means suggesting that you need to use each and every single one of them every month or every week. And in fact, it's probably better if you choose a few to focus on, or at least choose ones that don't currently have tokens. So maybe you actually wouldn't use across. I included it here because it's one of the largest bridges out there, but some of these, for example, Al2, has not actually released a token, so it might actually be smarter to interact with this bridge because you could qualify for multiple airdrops, their own token as well as the L2s. And the same applies to Orbiter Finance. But first, let's scroll over here to see the next section. So this is the L2 checklist section. Now, I have not included every single L2 out there. These are some of the big ones that may release a token at some point soon. Base, I'm not 100% sure about because Coinbase is a publicly listed company, but most of these other L2s have explicitly stated that they will release a token at some point, and so it would be smart to interact with all of them. Of course, there's others out there as well, and maybe I'll add more to the checklist soon. And so the idea here is that you would actually make transactions on, let's say, Al2 Finance for each of these different networks. So I would open up Al2 Finance, and then I would say, let's bridge from Linea to Base. And then once I have completed that bridge, then I would put a check mark on Al2 Finance for Linea, and then I could bridge from Base to Manta, and then Manta to OpBNB. So you get the idea. The goal is to have as many check marks as possible, and we want to have many different types of transactions on each network. So we want to bridge at least once per month, ideally more, for each network. And then we also want to do the other activities. So for example, swap and trade and borrow and lend and do all of these other activities down here at least once per month for each L2 that we're trying to farm. Now over here on the right hand side, I've got a list of the airdrops that we are farming here. Now the dApps list is not exclusive or exhaustive, I guess I would say. There's definitely many dApps on here or protocols that have not released a token that could release a token. And so we want to interact with as many of these as possible. But these are the L2s that we would farm with this checklist. There's also some omni-chain protocols that we can farm. So for example, Layer 0 is a good one. And if you use the Stargate bridge, you can bridge between layer 2s. You can qualify for an L2 airdrop like Linea but you can also qualify for a layer 0 airdrop. And then on the far right hand column, there's some airdrops for staking. Now, I've included these down at the bottom in the one-time activities section because they don't really depend on the number of transactions, but rather they depend on how much ETH you stake. So if you go to EtherFi, for example, or Swell is a good option, they've got an airdrop campaign on right now where if you stake with them, you can earn something called pearls, and those will directly correlate to an airdrop in the future. Now, it doesn't matter how many transactions you have, it just matters how much you stake. And so the more ETH you stake with Swell, the more Swell tokens you will get when they release their airdrop. The same thing applies for EigenLayer, EtherFi, and Diva. So really, these are a one-time activity. If you stake some ETH with them, you could qualify for an airdrop. Other one-time activities include the domain services for each of the L2s. So for example, you got the ZK name service, the Scroll name service, or Starknet ID. This is a one-time thing. You just need to register an ID and link it to your crypto wallet address one time, and that will help you qualify for at least the L2 airdrop that the domain is on, but potentially the naming services themselves could also release tokens. And the other one-time activity down here I have is a safe wallet. And I think it would be a good idea for people to at least once per L2 that you're trying to farm, set up a multi-sig wallet using Safe and sign at least one multi-sig transaction. Because for example, with the Optimism airdrop, signing multi-sig transactions was a multiplier for that airdrop. So it would be smart to do this at least one time for each of the L2s that we're trying to farm. So let me walk you through now a couple of examples so that I can show you the best way to use this checklist. Now, I already talked about bridging, and I do think that L2 Finance is a good one to use, as well as obviously Stargate and Orbiter. Really any of the ones here that qualify you for multiple airdrops at once are great because it's two birds, one stone, or sometimes even three birds, one stone. But next we've got the decentralized exchanges or DEXs. So this is where we can swap or trade crypto assets. Now, obviously I haven't listed all of the options on here, and you don't need to use every single one every single month, but a good strategy would be to use a few of them and then swap from one asset to a different asset and then go to a different exchange and then make another swap to another third different asset and repeat that a few times. So by making, say, 5 or 6 swaps on 5 or 6 different DEXs into different assets each time, you'll be spreading out your transaction history and also make it look a little bit more natural than if you were to, for example, swap from ETH to USDC to ETH to USDC back and forth, the same asset over and over and over again, just trying to move volume. And for example, SyncSwap is one of the DEXs I really like right now. It's not available for every network that we're trying to farm, but it's on zkSync, Linea, and Scroll, all of which don't currently have a token. And SyncSwap itself also doesn't have a token currently, so that's why I like using this one. So let's say I wanted to swap a little bit of ETH into USDC. Well, I could do that here. And SyncSwap has a promotion on right now where 30 to 90% of the gas fees are refunded to you, which is great. So let's go ahead and make this swap just to show you how it works. And yeah, I got a gas refund of over 60%, which is awesome. So now that I swapped into some USDC, I would go back over here and I would open up another DEX, I don't know, let's say Izumi Finance, and then I would swap from USDC to, for example, staked ETH and continue that process. So that is how I think you should attack the swapping portion of this. Now, there's other things you can do on these DEXs. For example, you can provide liquidity. So for example, on SyncSwap, I provided about $50 worth of liquidity to the staked ETH and ETH pool. That's earning me fees, and it's also another different type of transaction on the Linea network and using SyncSwap. And in the activities column here, I've tried to put all of the different things that you could do for each of the different apps or protocols. So I'm not gonna go through each and every single one. Obviously, that would take a really long time. But sometimes you can do multiple things on one protocol. Usually for the DEXs, swapping and providing liquidity is solid. But for example, Slingshot is a platform where you can do swaps, you can do bridging, and then they have fractionalized NFTs that you can purchase or sell. And so this is another interesting way that you can interact with this protocol, which also doesn't currently have a token. And you can do that across different networks. Now, not all of these apps or protocols are available on all of these networks, and so you'll just have to go through and find out which ones are available on the different networks and apply them as you see fit. Moving on down, another different type of action that we probably want to do on each of the networks is some type of DeFi lending or borrowing. So for example, Radiant Capital, you could open up and here we can lend out assets or borrow different assets. So I lent about $20 to this protocol, for example, but you can also take out loans and then you can loop and yield farm. So it's important to use this section as well, the DeFi platforms, to make sure that you hit that segment of the market as well. Now, the next one is also actually super important, and this is the dev activity. So this is where you can actually deploy a smart contract and interact with a smart contract yourself. And it's gonna make your wallet look like a dev wallet. Now, there's services out there that do this for you, cut and paste, so you don't actually have to know anything about smart contracts. You just have to connect your wallet to the platform. I really like Merkle, and here you can actually deploy a smart contract on all of these different networks and interact with it. So this is a good thing to do also once per month, is to come to Merkle and deploy smart contracts. It's just like a basic empty contract, cut and paste, but it's a transaction of a different type and it makes your wallet stand apart from other wallets. Third web is something similar. You can also deploy a token contract and mint tokens if you want to do that. Then there's another category of options and leverage trading. So these ones you can use if you want to lever up and trade options. It's a little bit dangerous, so I don't recommend doing it unless you know what you're doing, or if you are gonna do it, use small amounts of leverage, especially if you're a beginner. Then we've got a couple of unique ones with Dmail, which is a messaging service. And this is a good way to farm airdrops because the transactions are super cheap and you can do it all the time. So once you connect your wallet to Dmail and sign in, it's essentially an on-chain messaging service. And so you can compose a message and send an email on-chain, and when you do that, it pops up in your wallet asking you to confirm. It's gonna cost a few cents, but by doing this, you are again establishing a different type of transaction history in your wallet. And so I recommend for sure with Dmail to come back at least once a month, and for each of the L2s that are available, send at least one message. Snapshot is another one, and this is where you can actually vote in proposals. So for example, the Stargate DAO, if you hold STG tokens, you can come here and when there's proposals, you can vote on those proposals, and that could be an airdrop qualifier or multiplier. Now the next section here is NFTs. Again, another important different type of activity to do at least monthly. And some of these you can mint your own NFT collections. So for example, I like OmniC because this could potentially qualify you for L2 airdrops that you mint NFTs on, but also for the Layer 0 airdrop because OmniZ is powered by the Layer 0 protocol. So here it's very simple. Once you connect your wallet, you see there's a button to hit that says create. And here you can create your own NFT collection on many different Layer 2 networks. So definitely use this. Of course, there's other options here as well. ZK Bridge is another interesting and different type of activity where you can bridge an NFT from one Layer 2 network to a different one. So that's another different type of thing to do. Then you've got your NFT exchanges like Zonic and Element, where you can buy, sell, bid on, and list NFTs. Finally, you've got Zora, which is specific to the Zora Layer 2. But if you want to qualify for the Zora airdrop, this is definitely one of the main activities to complete for that. Now, I know I'm going a little bit fast here, but the idea is you can just open up this checklist yourself, copy paste it into your own document, and take your time going through it. Once you actually work into a rhythm and you know how it works, it will be a lot faster and you can sort of just speed through these. You just open up, for example, the Dmail app, send a message on all of the different L2s, and then move on to the next thing. The next type of activity is social. Now, some of these are chain specific. So for example, FriendTech is only available on Base. However, if you use FriendTech and Base has an airdrop, that could help you qualify. However, others like Lens are on the Polygon or the Matic blockchain. And while you probably won't get an airdrop from them, you could get an airdrop directly from Lens, the protocol. But also, sometimes these social platforms are used as sort of a proof of humanity, and it could be a multiplier or a qualifier for other airdrops as well. So it's possible that Linea or Scroll could say, oh, if you have a Lens handle and you've completed a certain number of interactions with the Lens protocol, then that could actually help you qualify for other L2 airdrops as well, because it proves that your wallet is not a bot, it's not a Sybil, it's a unique human being user. And the same thing applies for Phylon. And finally on the list, we have a bunch of different wallets. So MetaMask itself actually does not have a token yet. There's been some speculation that they might release one. So if you bridge and swap with MetaMask, you could qualify for a potential MetaMask airdrop, but also, of course, all of the different L2s that you're transacting on. And the same applies for these other wallets here as well. I haven't listed all of the wallets. There's tons of them out there. So yes, the idea with this is to come back at least once per month and go through the checklist. It will take some time for sure, especially if you're trying to hit each different L2 and each different type of activity. You probably won't be able to do all of it, but the more that you do and the higher volume that you do, the greater your chances are of qualifying for an airdrop and getting a large airdrop. And that last point there about volume is important. If you're making swaps for $5 here and there, it's not going to be as beneficial for you as if you're making swaps for $100, but obviously it's going to depend on how many resources you have available to allocate to airdrop farming. However, if you follow this checklist monthly and you do your best to hit as many of these things as possible, I can guarantee you that in 2024 or 2025, when these airdrops start hitting, you are going to make a lot of money. This could be potentially generational wealth if you farm it correctly and if you do it on multiple wallets at the same time as well. It just depends on how ambitious you are with this airdrop farming strategy. Anyways, hopefully you enjoy this checklist. I'll leave it linked down below, and I'll post other videos as well, potentially where I go through more in depth on my actual workflow process as I work through the checklist, and I could show you more in detail in a much longer video how I would actually go through the whole checklist, although that would take quite a long time. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.